There's no such thing as strong and weak body parts.
Yeah.
There's different shape, but it's all the same muscle composition, right? So I started to realize, okay, well, what's the difference? The difference is, well, my body has decided to put tension through this muscle real easily and doesn't really do a good job with this other one for whatever reason. It could be mechanics, it could be athletic history, it could be whatever. So I started to realize, like, hey, I can actually change this ownership. I was like, I took the internal locus of control. Like, I actually have the ability to do this. So it's not just about hard work. It's about hard work guided in the right way. It has to be specific work first, smart work first, then hard work second. And when I started to attach to that, I had some really great role models, really great mentors, taught me this process, and I just started to evolve it for my body. And every body part just started to come together. And every month, every week, it would just get better and better and better and better. And I'm like, oh my God, like, why didn't somebody teach me this 10 years ago?
Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Anders Warner here with Doug Larson, Dr. Andy Galpin. We are at the Fitness Business Summit 2018 at the Hilton in downtown San Diego, joined by Ben Pakulski. I get that right?
It's along those lines.
We'll get that right.
Close enough. We'll practice a few more times.
Yeah. We got an hour or so. we got a whole day.
Yeah.
Host of the Muscle Expert podcast.
You know it.
Giant. Really cool story here. So you came up through the bodybuilding world. As anyone that's watching this on YouTube, we can see this pretty clearly. But came across some issues, and now you're slowing things down a little bit.
No issues, man. I just like you're referring to my exit from bodybuilding.
Yeah.
No issues at all, man. I feel fucking great, but just was time for me to go. I had done enough. I had nothing else to accomplish. I had no other purpose.
Yeah.
You know, when we're going through bodybuilding, it's to be the best in the world at something, you need absolute clarity of purpose. And I didn't have that anymore. I'd accomplished a lot of things, and then I had children, and my children changed my life. So by no means did I leave because I had injuries or illnesses or sickness or any deteriorating health. It was time for me to go, man. I couldn't get that killer instinct anymore in the gym because I didn't have that desire to be the greatest in the world anymore because it's so selfish, right? Obviously, as a bodybuilder, to be the greatest in any sport, you guys get this. It's not like, I can go two toes in the water. I got to dive in head first.
Yeah.
And after you have kids, it just changes your motivation, man. It changes perspective. I really wanted to be a great dad. Still, obviously, is my number one priority. So, so being so selfish as a bodybuilder just wasn't in my wheelhouse anymore.
Was that a quick realization for you, or did you fight that at all?
I fought it, man. I fought it. So, I met my current wife in 2011, and I was so focused on being Mr. Olympia that I said to her that, listen, when we met, I was like, listen, here's my life. I'm a professional bodybuilder. I go to the gym, I eat, I sleep, I train, and occasionally I read some books. And if you can make that better, you could stay. Otherwise, there's the door. And she stayed. I'm being completely honest. She'll tell you the truth.
I believe it.
Yeah. Yep. And I was like, so she stayed, and we had a long distance relationship for a while. I was so focused on being Mr. Olympia that nothing was going to take me off track. I was learning this process. I was mastering the process. I was experimenting with everything. I was learning literally everything I could from anyone I could. And, getting better, learning so much, developing weak body parts. 2012, I believed I was well on my way to be Mr. Olympia. I started placing really well. I got 4th at the Arnold that year. I did the Olympia for the first time. Didn't do all that well. I got 11th. But at least it was
11th at
world.
Mr. Olympia.
Right.
That's terrible.
Well, I mean, it's not, I wanted to do better. And I knew I could do better. And then she got pregnant. And life changed.
Yeah.
Life changed. So for the first time I had my son, it was a sidetrack, but I was like, no, I can still keep doing this. And then, less than 9 months later, she got pregnant again. And that was my daughter. And from that point on, I really believe that God sent me 2 angels, man. The first one was enough to smack my stupid ass back into place. But as soon as I had a daughter, I couldn't be the same human being anymore, man. I'd never felt love for anyone, to be honest, in my life, until I felt the love for my daughter. And when I did that, I just couldn't be that same driven, killer instinct, like killer in the gym. I couldn't be that person anymore, man. I didn't want to be that person because you're going home to this beautiful little angel, and going to the gym and trying to be this other person. It just wasn't possible for me. And I truthfully believe they saved my life because I was so focused on, tunnel vision on being Mr. Olympia. I didn't care about anything else. I didn't care about the side effects. I didn't care about what I was doing to my body. I was just like, I'm just going to win this thing. I don't care how many times I win it. I'm just going to go win it, and then I can think about what happens after.
Yeah.
And so many athletes get caught in that, right? And it's like they get caught in the tunnel vision of, this is what I'm going to win. You ask an athlete if they would take, win an Olympic gold medal and then dying 10 years later, 90% of them would say absolutely yes.
Yeah.
And I was that guy, man. I was completely okay with it. But now I realize I have a higher purpose in life, and my kids have brought me that opportunity. Without them, I probably I wouldn't be dead. I'd probably be Mr. Olympia and be very shortening my life.
Yeah. Well,
we were talking with Dominic Cruz, former UFC bantamweight champion.
Yeah, I know he is.
He was saying a lot of fighters, especially guys that are at the top, they retire for one reason or another, but then once they retire, they don't have a purpose anymore. And so that's why, like, a couple years later, after like going through a depression or whatever, like they'll come back and try to fight again when they're a little bit too old. They're not in shape.
That's all we know.
And then they get their ass kicked, and then they retire again, and then they come back again. It's like they don't have that thing. So that seems like a very special thing to be able to have that greater purpose to be able to retire and still like feel very good about you as a person.
Well, so I think the greatest thing that happened was my wife got pregnant for the first time, and like I said, in 2011, and I just like, man, I need to create a business, because like as a bodybuilder, I was doing okay, man. I was making six figures. I was great to live by myself. But as soon as you have a child coming into the world, all of a sudden things change. So I realized I had to become a responsible human being and create a business. So that's how my business started, because I knew I had a unique skill set. I knew I had a unique knowledge base. Unique, different than most pro bodybuilders. So without having my wife get pregnant, I wouldn't have initiated that business. So that was, the catalyst for that. And that business has, continued to grow. And it's just basically focused on, like I said, we talked about earlier, is just like helping people understand exercise for your body. So that's it. So, it's all come from there. So that kind of is my new passion. The kids are obviously my greatest purpose, is being the best dad I can become to raise these little wonderful human beings. Subsequent to that, now I've got this passion of helping people and empowering them with a skill set to actually develop their greatest body. So people attach to, man, I have shitty genetics. You don't have shitty genetics. You just don't know how to train. You just don't know how to do it for your body. Right? That's just the bottom line, right? Like, some people have, is there obviously a variation of genetics? Of course, everyone has a varying ability to build muscle, but everyone can build a world-class body for them if you just have the right skill set. So that's what I've learned to teach, and I've got a very unique way of doing it. I've simplified the heck out of it for people, so there's a very few things they can understand in a short amount of time. And it's empowering, hundreds of thousands of people.
When you are 11th at Mr. Olympia and you know your goal is to be number one, what does that process kind of look like? And do you believe you can get the number one, or is that a 2-year, 3-year road?
Without a shadow of a doubt, I knew I could do it.
Yeah.
Anybody who wants to watch the process, I've got a personal movie that I did called The Debut, which is my debut into the Olympia, and I was expecting to do it every year after that. And there's also Generation Iron, so it kind of follows it a little bit. Generation Iron is it's a movie.
Greatest.
No, it's a movie.
It's a follow-up. It's a sequel.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
Generation Iron 1, I was in. Generation Iron 2, I was not. But Generation Iron 1, it's a movie. It's not a reality TV. Like, it's not reality. It's a movie. But there's a bit of backstory there. But yeah, man, there's no question in my mind I could have been Mr. Olympia. People may think that's arrogant, eccentric, whatever. But I believed in the process.
Yeah.
I believed that I could develop any body part to any amount. It's just a matter of incremental progression. And I had the focus, and nothing was going to stop me, man. I would do whatever it took. But yeah, I mean, the process was probably 3 years away from me. I knew it wasn't going to be one that, I had some pretty big weaknesses. Yeah. And it's just like, hey, and you're not going to go from 11th to 1st. You're going to go from 11th to 7th, then you're going to go to 5th, and then you're going to go to then you're going to go first.
But I feel like I've heard you talk a lot, and I've looked into a lot of your stuff. And I would agree, actually, that when you said earlier your program is pretty unique. It actually really is. Mm-hmm. And it's extremely logical, and it's something that is, when you say it here in a minute, people are going to be like, oh, that's it.
Yeah.
but like,
that's the best part, right?
Yeah.
Because no matter what your fitness level, from a 70-year-old mom to a 16-year-old boy, and everyone in between, pro athletes.
But I feel like, based on what I know or I've heard of you now, you have that unique thing because you had such big holes.
Exactly.
In your own game,
you're absolutely right. I mean,
so I would maybe just go there. Like,
sure. So, I was very successful in bodybuilding by accident. I trained really hard, had no intention of being a professional bodybuilder or anything like that. I went to college, went to university in Canada, got a 4-year degree. When I finished, I got a great job. I wanted to look good in my suit. So I decided, I need an external goal. I competed in the bodybuilding show. I won the show. Somebody goes, hey, there's another show in 3 weeks or 6 weeks. Let's do it again. Sure. Won that. Another show 6 months later, won that. People started paying me to bodybuild. I retired from my job. I was like, I'm getting just as much money to work out as I am to get this job, so let's retire from that job. From there, it's like, year and a half, not even a year and a half, about a year and a half later, a little less than a year and a half later, I won my pro card. It just kind of went from there. It was purely on hard work, and I did well genetically. Don't get me wrong. I had genetics to build aesthetic muscle, big muscle, whatever you want to say. And I attached to I'm just going to be the hardest working guy in the room. So when I was a kid, I was lazy.
Heard this before?
Yeah. I know some of these people.
Yeah.
They're very successful.
Right. So when I was a kid, I was very lazy. I was fat. Everyone in my family was an alcoholic. Just not their best upbringing. But I attached to 2 middle fingers to the world. I'm going to do it myself. So I just work. Like, I hated being lazy. So I would work harder than everybody else. And if you came in the gym with me, I would die before you beat me. That was always my focus. So I was like, well, as long as I keep working hard, I'm going to win. I'm going to do well. I'm going to keep working hard. I knew I'd work harder than anybody. So 2009, I do my first pro show. I did really well. I got 3rd place at the Tampa Pro. I thought that was really great, behind one of my mentors, Dennis James. I felt great about this. So the next year, I decided to do the New York Pro, 2010. I committed everything in my life. I literally stopped doing everything other than eat, sleep, train. I trained twice a day for 8 months. I put on 17 pounds of stage weight, and I was lighter in a span of 8 months. I just grew, 17 pounds in 8 months is absurd, because I was so focused. Obviously, I was enhanced. And
that was the best I've ever heard that.
Yeah, just slid that in
I
there,
was
didn't
enhanced.
Slipped in there.
God, that was good.
Listen, I'll talk
Skipping
about
right
that
over
too.
that.
But
Because you were
I won't skip
focused?
over
You
it.
mean? Oh, no.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
You're pro bodybuilders, to be
Yeah.
assumed.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm going into this New York Pro in 2010, on top of the world, absolutely shredded. Glutes are in, everything's great. Get to the show, and I get 7th. I get crushed, and I literally said, "Fuck this! I'm going to retire because it's politics." Because growing up, everyone in bodybuilding goes, "Oh, it's politics, it's the judges," and I didn't even look at the pictures. I was like, you know what? I'm going to retire. Fuck this! I'm done. I don't need this bullshit. I've got other stuff going for me.
Yeah.
Fucking ownership.
Right. And so
Ownership.
and then
God, it's
right.
crazy.
You're absolutely right. And 2 weeks later, I decided I finally got back. I went for a 2-week vacation to Mexico. Came back from Mexico and I looked at the pictures and I go, wow, I look like shit. I deserved 7th. Maybe I deserved 5th or 6th or something, but I got 7th and I deserved it. And that was the first kind of catalyst for me to go, it's not about hard work, man. You can keep working hard. And what's going to happen, right? Your body is organically going to use its strong body parts. The analogy I always use is if you're moving, I'm going to move houses tomorrow, and you got 5 friends. Which one are you going to call? I'm going to call the big ones, right? The ones that move the big furniture. So your body works the same way. Your body goes, I've got this really big muscle right here. Let's use more of that because it's more efficient. Your body's built for efficiency. So I started learning, okay, if you can build any body part, any muscle in your body, you can build them all. There's no such thing as strong and weak body parts.
Yeah.
There's different shape, but it's all the same muscle composition, right? So I started to realize, okay, well, what's the difference? The difference is, well, my body has decided to put tension through this muscle real easily and doesn't really do a good job with this other one for whatever reason. It could be mechanics, it could be athletic history, it could be whatever. So I started to realize, like, hey, I can actually change this ownership. I was like, I took the internal locus of control. Like, I actually have the ability to do this. So it's not just about hard work. It's about hard work guided in the right way. It has to be specific work first, smart work first, then hard work second. And when I started to attach to that, I had some really great role models, really great mentors, taught me this process, and I just started to evolve it for my body. And every body part just started to come together. And every month, every week, it would just get better and better and better and better. And I'm like, oh my God, like, why didn't somebody teach me this 10 years ago? And that's ultimately where I am now. Is that's how it started. It started with a massive pain where I was literally like, fuck this, I'm giving up my life dream of being a professional bodybuilder. I'm going to walk away because I thought it was politics. And then when you take it on yourself, it changes.
One of the first things I teach every semester in my classes is that exercises don't determine adaptation. Right, it's the application of the exercise that determines everything. And so going with that, one thing that I heard you talk about this on Jay Farouche's podcast a lot, and I've heard you elsewhere, that just because we're both doing a bicep curl or the same exercise, it doesn't matter what it is. It's not necessarily going to do the same thing because our anthropometrics are different, the way we move. If your biceps femoris is stronger than mine, I'm going to use a different hamstring muscle than you're going to use during the same exercise or whatever happens to be. So even the exact same exercise between two people,
muscle
may not
lengths,
even
limb lengths,
exactly,
pelvic structure,
So you can explain that really well of identifying an exercise that you got to figure out what you're trying to get to, but then you got to find an exercise that works that thing, and you have to let go of the exercise, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, people don't realize that exercise is this thing that was created however many decades ago, and people are attached to exercise. People are attached to, I do a bench press for chest, I do a squat for quads. doesn't fucking matter. If you're trying to build a body, the only thing that matters is applying load to a muscle, applying tension to a muscle, and then taking it through a range of motion under tension, right? And that's it. And like, so if I can create this internal focus where I attach to, I'm just trying to load this muscle as much as possible and then take it through a range of motion under control, using specifically that muscle, well, it doesn't matter what the external mechanism looks like anymore. It's just about this internal response that I'm after, right? So exercise is there to create an internal response. And without that, why else am I doing it? Obviously, CrossFit is different. Powerlifting is different. Strength training is different. But hypertrophy, if I'm trying to build a muscle, the only single thing I'm trying to do is challenge a muscle. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what it looks like and how I do it, right? And it's not such a thing as a shaping exercise and a building. It's all the same thing. It's all just forces in the body.
There's no toning?
Well, yeah, you know.
Oh, come on.
Toning happens when you do butt clenches 12
On
hours
it.
a day. Yeah.
On it.
Beat that dead horse.
We're all doing
This
it.
is why we do them standing.
Exactly.
You don't even know what's going on right now.
I see those faces you're making over there, man.
One of the hardest things to do in many different categories, whether it's fitness or business or being a husband or a father or anything, is objectively looking at your situation and identifying those weaknesses, and then admitting that they actually are weaknesses.
Right.
Like how do you stay objective and like identify those weaknesses and then
anyone who's a
attack
professional athlete is probably their own worst critic, right? Because you have to be. You can't rely on other people to give you their opinion and go, oh, you need to get better at this. The reason I was able to get to where I was is because I was my own worst critic, man. I got off stage. I already knew what the judges were going to say. I didn't need to go up to the judges and go, could you tell me what I did wrong or what I could do better? I fucking knew better than everybody else. I can look at my body and objectively say, hey, man, that looks like shit. Like, that needs to be better. You weren't in shape. Your glutes weren't tight. Or, you know, your back was weak or your biceps were small. Whatever. I knew more than anybody else. And that was it, man. It's like to become successful in anything, you have to be your own worst critic. In business, you have to be able to objectively look at the whole picture and go, well, where can I fill in the gaps? And that's the best approach to anyone building their body. You're only as good as your weakest link. And that sounds like a cliche, but that's such the reality of it. It's like, I can't build every muscle if there's something that's holding me back. If there's something that's weak, if there's an injury, you can't build the muscles around there because your body will always down-regulate your nervous system. So it's objectively looking at what are the weaknesses and how do I make them strengths. And it's not just like, how am I going to make them good enough? It's like, no. How am I going to make this my best body part? Right? Because that's where people go wrong is they go, I'm just going to do just enough to get by. And well, who has that ever served, right? Like, that's not going to serve you. If you want to be good at anything or great at anything, you take your weaknesses and you make them absolute strengths. You know, like I did that with my hamstrings. I did that with my, so you'll laugh. Here's a story. The reason people said that I wasn't going to be a professional bodybuilder, I had no legs. My legs were too small, and my shoulders were too narrow. And if you've ever seen my body,
Shoulders?
Yeah, my shoulders are too narrow, and my legs are too small. Right. Yeah, and my quads, right? And people go, oh, you'll never do it because your shoulders are too narrow and your quads are too small. I'm like, okay. So I internalize that, and I go 2 middle fingers to the world. I'm gonna, and I obviously went the complete opposite direction. Yeah. You know, I wish people had said my back was too small. But yeah, so yeah, no, man. I mean, being your own worst critic, and not just doing what's enough, right? Always doing 10 times more than anyone else would ever do, because that was my attachment, right? I saw a picture of Dorian Yates when I was like 17 years old, and I was like, I need to look like that, and until I look like that, I'm shit. And that's the honest truth. And people are like, dude, you're getting so big. I'm like, no. Like, I literally probably held the picture in my wallet, right? And be like, when I look like this, then you can send big. Until then, I'm shit. And that's just standards, right? Yeah. World-class standard. Like any athlete you talk to, you guys interview tons of great athletes. Any athlete you talk to is not going to be like, oh, I just did enough to get by. I wanted to be the fucking best.
Yeah, there's actually at the end of that movie, I think Heath and Kai Green are standing on stage, and there's like a voiceover that's like, they all look the same when they're on stage, like individually, but when you put them side by side, it makes so much sense. Sure. And I've literally just carried that with me, that line there, because it makes so much sense when you put the two best people together, and there's so many differences. They'll be standing on stage, and it's just, you're like, oh my God, how could you look any better than that? And then you put those two guys together, and you're like, it's just so obvious right now. Yep. It's so obvious.
And the reality in every sport is that it's that 1/10 of a second, right? And that's the same in bodybuilding. It's not like, couch potato compared to a Mr. Olympia. It's literally like, the equivalent of 1/10 of a second. It's like, hey man, you fucked up on one meal, or you didn't hit that muscle hard enough. It's one thing. Yeah. And you have to pay attention to that's why I loved bodybuilding, man. One, it was all me. Two, it was like 24 hours a day. I needed to do everything. I was obsessed. Yeah. And I love that about it. People, are you obsessed? Absolutely, I'm obsessed. I'm completely okay to admit that. If you want to be great at anything, fucking become obsessed. It's not a bad thing to be obsessed about something if you really want to be great at it. I truthfully believe if you've never ever met anyone that's great, they're probably obsessed with what they're doing. Yeah. That's success.
A lot of that stuff carry over into kind of the new direction and realizing, hey, I have kids now. and you can't focus on that. And I think that's like a massive transitioning factor
it's
for
hard,
a lot
man.
of people.
I'm learning right now.
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot. So because parenting is
you go right back to zero. You're a baby. You're brand new.
It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just about me, right?
Yeah.
So like, and there's other people that can influence my kids.
Yeah.
And that, like,
Andy had never considered that.
Could you
Oh,
imagine
God.
someone on the playground like messing with his kid? And you're like, dude, don't do that.
There's
Don't
memes
do that.
all around the internet right now. So when my daughter was born, I got 100 memes being like, "Oh, so you've come from my daughter, right?"
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. I mean, parenting's a whole new ballgame, especially because it's not just about me, and I have a lot to learn, man. Even just interacting with my wife, we have very different parenting styles, and I have to just let go. I have to hey, she's going to parent how she parents, and I try to kind of steer the boat a little bit. I try to influence in a positive way, but the only thing I can control is me. And I want to be the rock in their life, right? I want them to go, who's the favorite person? Who's your superhero? It's my dad.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what anybody else does. The only thing I control is me. And that's a hard thing to realize because through my whole life, I just cut everybody out. Like as a bodybuilder, you just go, fuck you. I'm going to do it myself. Get out of my way or I'm going to crush you. Either you're making me better, me better or you're out. Now I can't do that anymore. So I'm learning, man. I'm a student of life. But yeah, it's fun. It's learning.
What's your training look like now?
Minimal.
Okay.
Well, so for so many years, man, I was attached to being the biggest guy in the world, being the hardest working guy. And now I just kind of like having fun. I still train, not nearly as often because business is and my family is my top priority. So I probably train 3 or 4 times a week. But because I'm so efficient and effective at training and contracting muscles, I get a lot done in a small amount of time.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what I'm trying to. I'm experimenting now with a nutrition and a training plan that's like, what's the absolute minimum we can do to get a great result? So I'm playing with stuff. I'm playing with like extreme ketogenic dieting. I'm playing with extreme different types of supplements. So just trying to play, and I do blood work once a month and check what my blood is doing, and just it's just this one like big science experiment. But yeah, training is kind of whatever I fit in.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to train hard. It's usually pretty small volume, pretty strength oriented, right? So I'm trying to be, the word I use is resilient, meaning I just want to be able to do everything. I want to be able to sprint with my kids. Yesterday, you guys see my beautiful red face. I did a 10-hour hike up a mountain, so 10,000 feet of elevation. So they call it cactus to clouds. So we went from ground zero in Palm Springs to 10,000 feet of elevation. Just about 10 hours, about 9 hours. But that was.
Can you imagine ever doing that in your bodybuilding days?
Dude, I just did it. I didn't even know I was doing it, to be honest. I just did it on a whim.
I've heard this is cool.
Walk up there? Yeah, let's go
I
there.
have a buddy who lives here in San Diego, and he's a ultra marathon guy. He's a triathlon guy, and he goes, "Yeah, man, we're gonna do this thing. I did it in 3.5 hours." And I go, "Okay, sweet." But he didn't tell me he did it in 3.5 hours running. Thanks, prick. So he totally undersold it, and I would have done it anyways because I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, I'm gonna get to the top. It's gonna suck a little bit, but I'll get there. But yeah, I just kind of didn't train for it. Just started going, and it was a great experience. I'm limping a little bit today, but other than that, I'm good.
Yeah. You mentioned some of the nutrition stuff. What in that transition period? Like, what were you doing before in the bodybuilding stuff? That I'm always amazed at how dialed in the nutrition is for you guys. And then a little bit of the transition into finding what the hell healthy looks like.
Sure.
And you
it's
mentioned
hard.
doing some extreme keto stuff. Like,
right. I'll tell you the hardest thing that
experiments.
I've experienced so far from bodybuilding. It's one of the questions I get a lot is what's the hardest part about transitioning out is trying to break the psychological paradigm of 20 years of trying to eat to be the biggest human being on the planet.
Yeah.
It's still ingrained in my unconscious.
What is that? What is just eating to be the biggest human being on the planet? What does that look like?
Well, it's highly focused on consumption, and that's a big mistake. So if the people out there are attaching to the calories, the macros, I don't know, Andy, we could have a fight about this, but I don't know what your opinion is, but it's not just about what you eat, right? There's so many, I don't know what your opinion is. It's not just about macros, right? It's about what you absorb.
You've lost me already.
Fuck, sorry. We'll hug it out later, man. We'll hug it out.
Maybe we won't. I don't know.
But yeah, so
pass those out.
as a bodybuilder, you're attached to I need to consume X number of calories or this massive amount of protein and carbs and fats. And I realized that's not what it's about. It's about absorption. It's about utilizing. What's the most I can absolutely get out of this? It's about quality first, and then it's about make sure your body's actually absorbing it, make sure your body's utilizing it, make sure your autonomic nervous system is in the right place to actually absorb it. And during my career, at least for the first 5 years, I didn't think about that stuff. It was just like I'm reading the magazines, I'm reading the books, and it's just like, hey man, you gotta hit your macros. I think that's the most ignorant suggestion possible. Like, it's not about macros, man. It can't be about macros. It's if you're not balancing your sympathetic, parasympathetic, autonomic nervous system, it's not the same thing. Your body doesn't just digest because you put it in. Yeah. Your body doesn't just absorb because you put it. It doesn't work like that. So, now, obviously, throughout my career, my biggest error was just focus on mass consumption.
Were you the classic chicken breast, brown rice, broccoli?
For a lot of years, man. Yeah. For a lot of years, I was. Man, I now have an allergy, or it's not an allergy, maybe a sensitivity to chicken because I ate so much chicken. Right. Sensitivity to egg whites.
I believe that.
Dude, egg whites, fuck, so many years. So now I'm very attached to just eating the highest quality meats, wild meats. Everything is the highest quality, grass-fed, and less because what my body uses is more important than what I consume. And that's a paradigm shift for most fitness people. It's like, I got to make sure I hit my macros. Hitting your macros is, I think, at some level important. But before that, it needs to be right. We could talk about it. I love to talk about it. But before that, if you're in a sympathetic autonomic nervous system state, you're not digesting anything. So if you're stressed, you're not digesting anything. So just because I ate it doesn't mean my body uses it. So I'm really attached now to getting people parasympathetic before they eat. So it's breathing, it's meditation. 5 minutes, man. Calm your shit down. Even after you train, 5 minutes. You got. Like I literally say, put your phone over there, go sit on the couch, close your eyes, and be by yourself for 5 minutes. Calm down your sympathetic response. And people are so attached to these pre-workout stimulants, tons of coffee. Guess what? Your body's not digesting food when you're sympathetic. And most people are so highly sympathetically aroused. Their digestion shit. They got gas, they got bloating. They're like, man, I eat so little and I still get fat. Of course you do. I mean, I have a hard time putting on muscle. Of course you do. Because all those things require you to be in a parasympathetic state. You're not. So as a bodybuilder, you have such an opportunity to put on a tremendous amount of muscle. If you do these little things right, it's not just about the big picture shit, like how much did you lift, and did you do progressive overload, and did you hit your macros. Those are important, but these other things that you're not thinking about are way more important than you think. Yeah. Breathing, meditation, parasympathetic, digestion, man, microbiome, like all this stuff is everything. Your brain governs everything, right? Without your brain, you're in trouble. So
how would you know? Is there a tangible feeling or outcome or something where if someone's listening to this and they're going, God, I wonder if I'm not digesting as well as I should be? Like, how would someone know that they're not digesting as well as they could be?
My statement is, if you can't, therefore you must. So if you're someone who can't sit in meditation for 5 minutes, you're the one who needs it more than anybody. So if you're not someone who could sit down and put your phone down for 5 to 10 minutes, or if you can't meditate for half an hour, you're the person who needs it more than anybody. So most of us live in the society we live in a really high state of sympathetic arousal. So we wake up in the morning, first thing we do is check our phone, we drive to work, we're getting cut off, we're getting pissed off, we get to work, our boss is yelling at us, we open our emails, we got stress, on our way home the wife gets pissed off, whatever it is, right? All these things are stress, driving our sympathetic nervous system up. And then you go to the gym and you add more sympathetic stress on that. Most people digest like shit. If you're feeling gas, bloating, indigestion. If you're not hungry between meals, you're not digesting your food. So, as a bodybuilder, I ate so much, man, my stomach started to get blown out. And I'm like, God, I didn't understand why these other guys could eat so much or so little and not have the stomach. And I was stressed. Like, my brain was always running. I was, as far as bodybuilders go, I was a very type A personality. You'll never meet a bodybuilder who's a type A personality, man. Bodybuilders are very chilled out, smoking weed, hanging out. I'm going to be an hour late, and that's my time. I'm not going to be stressed because I got to be there on, it's just. Huh. Yeah. No bodybuilders.
I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah, I would have thought the opposite.
No bodybuilder a type A personality, man. Every guy you meet, hey, man, I'll be there at 6, 7:30. They roll in. Sorry, man, I had to eat. I'm chill. Nobody's. They go on their own schedule. They work on their own time. So no stress. Yeah. The top guys in the world you meet are chilled out, man. Yeah. Chilled out, and I was the opposite. So I was always this high state of sympathetic stress, and this is why I needed to learn it.
Yeah. So if you can learn how to relax and eat higher quality foods, then that's something that sets you up for better digestion.
Calming down your mind, man, to start. Calming down your mind. Even it's just 5 minutes of breathing, deep breathing with a really focus on that exhalation. Really slow, methodical, controlled, extended exhalation, some breath holds. I do like a box breathing type thing, which a lot of people are attached to.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break. I love this conversation because I think that this down-regulation piece is something that everyone is missing in their training. And finding ways that we can start to get into the parasympathetic is really we need to have systems in people's training to be able to do that. So when we get back from the break, let's talk parasympathetic.
Thanks for watching the show. If you'd like to learn more about how to improve your snatch, clean, and jerk, we have a free 55-page ebook you can get at flightweightlifting.com. It has sample programming specifically for weightlifting, weightlifting how-to technique videos, and other tips on how to improve all of your lifts. Go to flightweightlifting.com and you can download that ebook for free.
Download it now.
Welcome back to Barbell Shrugged. Here's Ben Pakulski.
Come on, man.
God. Want to get into this parasympathetic, this balance thing. So
Yeah.
I think all of us, I mean, me specifically, and training very hard, often, all the time, eating as much food as I could possibly shove in my face to put on weight. And then one day I was like, I am burnt the fuck out.
Mm-hmm.
And
obviously, you're well before that, your body stopped building muscle. Right?
Oh yeah. All of those things stopped.
I
and
mean,
then
look at him.
Instead of thinking like, hey, maybe I should chill out, it was like, I need more gas pedal.
Yeah, and that's
more
when
gas
people
pedal.
start resorting to steroids. Right? Like, oh, I just don't have the genetics, so therefore I need.
Yeah.
No. Like before that, you should even think about that shit. I try to dissuade everybody from doing that now, to be honest. But because you have so much in the tank, so many things that you can do to move the needle before you would ever want to consider that stuff.
Yeah.
And nobody in fitness, nobody in bodybuilding is talking about this stuff. Maybe in fitness, but not in bodybuilding. Just because, we, as a culture, we attach to work harder. We're always attached to these external mechanisms. We're attached to, run faster, jump higher, lift more, score more goals, whatever it may be. It's fucking bullshit. When it comes to changing your physique, what happens on the outside doesn't matter, except if it creates the internal response you're after. So what I'm focused on is teaching people about the internal focus. What's happening inside your body? Is this stress you're subjecting your body to on the outside creating the internal response you want? And if it's not, why are you doing it? So if I'm trying to build muscle, I'll make sure the stress you're doing, every single minute of that stress, every millimeter of every rep is contributing to the stress that I'm trying to accomplish, which in this case is I'm trying to challenge this muscle. If it's not contributed, don't do it. Right, so all these things, like everybody's so attached to lift more, lift heavier, that's going to get you better results. Well, no, it's not. Not necessarily. Just because I put more weight on the bar doesn't mean my muscles are actually doing my work.
Yeah, this is a very clear example of if you had 3 sets of 10 at 70% on your workout, didn't matter the exercise, right? And you focused on contracting the muscle more, or didn't focus. So did you execute the same exact repetition, the same volume mode, right?
Yep.
It could be two totally different outcomes if it's focused on quality of muscle contraction, for example, focusing on a mind-muscle connection. You can get completely different actual adaptations after 6-8 weeks. You would have a lot more muscle than somebody else, even if they did the exact same volume, right? So those numbers are sort of important at some level, but at some level, like what you're saying is just make the muscle contract very hard. And it doesn't really matter if that's the exact same exercise, if what the rep load is, because it's the internal stress you're trying to get to, which causes the adaptation, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's where people go wrong, is we're all attached to, I'm going to bench press for chest, I'm going to squat for quads.
Or the numbers, getting super attached to the numbers, right?
Right,
like how many reps I do, sets I do. Like
none of that stuff matters, man. What matters is, am I subjecting my body to this specific stress that I'm trying to subject it to? And then a deeper level than that, then we start getting into, okay, well, what's the actual biochemical response that's happening? But even before any of that matters, before the sets and reps and the type of biochemical response matters, you got to standardize that stimulus so you're actually doing the thing you want to do. Like, you got to make sure that the right muscle I'm trying to train is actually training. Right, your body has all these different solutions when you're exercising. Your body can use any number of these different muscles to move a load. That doesn't mean it's the one you want. It's not always the case, right? I can show you how to do a bench press without ever using your pecs at all. Like, what? But I mean, I thought that's a chest exercise. No, it's not a chest exercise. Unless you set it up properly to be a chest exercise, it may not be a chest exercise. So let's figure out how to do things for your body, because you guys are all built differently than me, and then challenge the muscle. And then once we've standardized this stimulus, once it always looks exactly the same, now I can quantify and go, okay, I know exactly what every rep is giving me. Now it makes sense for me to manipulate sets and reps. Then it makes sense for me to manipulate X's and O's. But before that, if I can't standardize the stimulus, how the hell do I know, if it's actually doing what I want it to do?
How many bodybuilders are actually getting into the depth of this? Is it everyone at the top is got their own specific exact way they're doing their own specific bench press to the rep schemes exactly like they need, or is this just something that you've dug into?
Nobody's talking about this stuff. So here's the thing, man. If you want to be a 100-meter sprinter, chances are you're not going to be a 100-meter sprinter. You're never going to be as fast as Usain Bolt. You're just not Usain Bolt.
Yeah.
So why is Usain Bolt? Because he's Usain Bolt. He's built that way. He's got this beautiful mechanics to be a great sprinter. All the guys who are in the top 10, 20, 30 bodybuilders in the world could do anything and build muscle, right? It's mechanics. Their body just naturally fits in these exercises really, really well. Not everyone's like that. So if you want to learn how to build muscle for your body, you got to learn how to do it for your body. And the worst thing you can do is go watch other pro bodybuilders. Like, it doesn't matter what they do. They just accidentally fit into these exercises.
Yeah.
When you watch me squat, everyone goes, man, Ben's a great squatter. He's got great quads, therefore I should squat. It's a terrible, terrible thought process, right?
Yeah.
No, it's like, no, you're not built like me. So let's find what works for you to challenge this muscle. And don't be attached to what it looks like on the outside. Is a leg press better than a hack squat? Is better than the squat? I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
It depends what works best for you.
Yeah.
How does that play into, I mean, are you coaching people, and
Sure.
how do you talk to people about exercises? Because it's, I mean, so you talk about Usain Bolt, when he talks about running the 100, he knows exactly how many steps he's taking.
Mhm.
He knows when he's picking his head up. He knows how many steps he's in.
Sure.
And, you know, he gets to the last 15 meters, whatever it is, and then he's like, you know, at that point I'm probably winning the gold medal and I can look around. I've got 3 steps left, whatever it is. How are you able to train people? Because, I mean, to sit down and find what is the best for each person, you know,
It's actually it's not as complicated as it sounds.
Okay.
Because there's a very few things that if you just start observing, you can figure it out really,
Yeah.
really quickly. So, you know, we were speaking about this earlier. Why were the bodybuilders in the 1970s better? Because they didn't have anybody before them to model. So they actually had to learn. They had to watch. So they'd come in the gym in these string tank tops and really short shorts, and they would watch the muscle contract. So they'd do an exercise, and they'd go, oh, when I do this, that contracts. I need to build more of that, so let's do more of this. So rather than being attached to watching some dude on YouTube and go, oh, that guy's got huge pecs, therefore I should do that exercise, they just observed. And if people did that, if they just go, oh, man, and when I do this exercise, it looks like that's working, I need to do more of that, life would be so much easier. They would actually have better bodies just by observing, like, when I do this, this happens. That's great. Rather than mindlessly now watching YouTube, watching whomever on you know, social media and going, oh, I'm just going to do it exactly like that because that must be the right way to do it. That's not the reality, right? So this is the disconnect that people are having, is not watching anybody else and just figure out what works for you. So what does a muscle do? Contracts. That's it. And here's the reality. Every muscle has 2 ends. It pulls one end closer to the other. That's it.
Yeah.
Like one end is stabilized.
How dare you make this so simple?
Right.
I've been doing this forever.
Fuck.
Trying to figure it out. You just
Well, so let's
so
think about
simple.
This, right? So every muscle has an origin and insertion. Origin is typically closer to the midline. Insertion pulls closer to the midline. That's it. Now, there's some levels on top of that. I want to stabilize the origin as much as possible. No extraneous movement, because, you know, the analogy I give is if I have a rope in my hand, both ends of the rope are moving. How much tension am I creating in the rope? 0, ultimately, right? Or less. If one end is anchored and I'm able to pull on the other end, I can actually create some tension in that rope. So we need one end completely anchored. So in most cases, that's going to be your pelvis. For if you're training your lower body, it's going to be your scapula. If you're training your upper body, you need to have those completely anchored in order for you to actually create a substantial amount of tension in the other end of the muscle and tension and motion. So that's it, man. Like learning some very basic things about stabilize this one end. Now pull this closer to here. Now slowly using the muscle to resist that, to decelerate this load. Now take it the other way. Now take it as far away as you can and find length in that muscle.
Yeah.
Now bring it back the other way. And the reality is muscles don't move very far, right? So people watch range of motion. You're like, hey man, well your arm moved like 24 inches. Yeah, but the muscle only moved 3 inches or sometimes 2 inches. So how much potential for loss force is there, right? Like if I move a centimeter in the wrong direction, I could be losing 20, 30, 40% of potential stimulus just by, maybe just a little bit of extraneous movement unnecessarily. So locking your body in and then just watching the muscle contract. And if I'm trying to train my lower pecs, it's literally like bring the insertion close to the lower origin. If I'm trying to train my upper pec, it's like bring this insertion on my shoulder closer to the upper pec. And that's it.
And that's where we all failed so much when we were learning this thing in the bodybuilding magazines.
Watch
Because
bench
it was like,
press.
bench press, but all of a sudden you realize like this overextended shoulder
even
position.
Before that, the angle of the sternum. Like we all have a very different angle, right?
Yeah.
Some people are very flat. Some people are very broad. Completely different exercise for you and for me. You lay in a bench press, you're probably using all upper chest and no lower chest. I lay in a bench press, it's almost like a decline. What most people would think is a decline. Most of you guys, probably all of you guys, would do a flat bench press and work more of your upper chest because it's just the way your body sets up, right? But most people, if I said, hey, man, that's an upper chest exercise, they think I'm crazy. But for 80% of the population, this is observation and completely anecdotal, 80% of the population, a flat bench press is an upper chest exercise or not even a chest exercise. Sometimes they don't use any chest because it's
all shoulders for me.
Yeah.
All shoulders. I have no pecs.
In 5 minutes, we could fix it, man. In literally 5 minutes.
Sold.
Done.
Sold. When you talk about numbers, like we're classically and we still teach in class, it's it's 10 to 12 reps, 70, 80% or something like that. Do you find that still
the
true?
textbook says so.
Oh.
What? We read in the magazine, Ben.
They said we're right.
Well,
You said bench and you did this number. Like,
right.
is that in the ballpark? Is it completely wasteless?
No, I don't disagree with X's and O's. I call them X's and O's, sets and reps. I don't disagree with them mattering. But ultimately, your body doesn't know if it's 8, if it's 6. All your body knows is, I break it down for people in a simple way. You have 4 phases of muscle contraction. You have concentric, eccentric, isometric, and rest. And how much time you spend in each phase is going to determine the type of biochemical response you get in your body, right? So if I spend a lot of time in concentric, we know it's going to be a little more calorically demanding, maybe a little more metabolic stress. Eccentric is going to be substantially more muscle damage. Isometric may be more neurological adaptation, getting your nervous system to fire up a little bit more. And then rest just allows me to determine how much of this metabolic stress am I going to allow to accumulate. That's it. So that matters more than sets and reps. So the way I measure these things in my member side is like every set and rep you do, you're just going to enter the number of reps and the tempo. So then now I can go. I can tell you exactly how many seconds you spend in concentric, exactly how many seconds you spend in eccentric, exactly how many seconds you spend in isometric, and then how much rest you spent. And then by that, I can deduce what the stimulus was that you subject to your body to. Was it a high amount of concentric, high amount of eccentric, high amount of isometric, high amount of rest, and manipulating. And then we can give you a score based on how to manipulate those things, right? That's the easiest way. To me, that makes sense. Sets and reps is great, but the only thing that ultimately matters is time in each of these phases.
Do you have a ballpark idea of how much time? Maybe I'll ask this a different way. You've got most people in the worlds that we live in, weightlifting for me, CrossFit a little bit more, for you guys and both, are now coming to the realization that, all right, maybe some of this bodybuilding stuff we need to put back into our program because we're either getting broken or we have a huge weakness in our movement because we have an underdeveloped muscle tone. But a lot of them are implementing that in a way where I'm like, I don't think they really understand how to build muscle. Right. One of the ones, so basically what you talk about is feeling, right?
Yep.
Like you learn to feel the muscle contract. Right. That's what matters. But how do they work some of the stuff into their CrossFit or their weightlifting programming and not either do way too much and blow themselves out? Or could you have a guideline at all?
Sure. I mean, what are we trying to create, right? We're trying to create resilience, and we're trying to make a body bulletproof. We want to make it absolutely so we're strong everywhere. There's no weaknesses. We're strong in absolutely every range. So that means getting strong where you're weak. So whatever that means for you, let's identify that and make it strong, and then find the exercise or the mechanism, whatever it happens to be, to challenge the muscle where you're weak and get strong where you're weak, right? So that, people attach to, most injuries happen because people are going outside of what they can actively control, right? They go outside of their active range of motion, muscle's weak there, your body starts relying on passive structures, so then it gets this inflammation thing.
Passive structures being tendons and...
Right, yeah, tendons, ligaments, joints. So if we go outside of what we can actively control, the body has no choice, can't use these muscles, it's going to rely on the passive structures. So what we need to do is we need to increase our active range of motion somehow by increasing what most people would go, I got increased flexibility. It's not flexibility, it's mobility. So I want to be, and the only difference is my definition of mobility is what can I actively control? And that comes as a result of increasing stability, right? So most people go, I want to get more range of motion, therefore I should stretch. No, because stretching is going to increase your passive range of motion, which you can't actively control. What I need is a range of motion I can control. Right. So how do we do that? Well, we need to challenge those ranges that we are weak in at the extreme of the range with a little bit of tension, just what we're capable of doing there, man. Sometimes it's bunny first soft contractions, right? But eventually I'm going to become incrementally stronger, and my body goes, oh, I'm actually strong here. I can go a little bit further, right? Whereas if you keep attaching to, I'm just gonna force this, like I'm gonna, put more weight on the bar to force me into a position. What's your body gonna do? Your body's gonna go, shit, this is hurting me. I need to tighten up and inflame, and more inflammation here. Tighten this muscle up more because I need to protect it. So what most people are doing wrong is they're trying to get strong with just the wrong progressive load. It's still a means of progressive overload that we should be implementing, but it's got to be like incrementally improving where I'm weak.
I can agree with this because I've recently started doing a seated horizontal pec fly machine.
Nice.
Oh, it's great.
Love that.
And I went to do it one time after one of my grad students had been in there, and I had to take the entire stack off of his thing and put like 7 pounds on there because I was like, God. And I got so sore doing that and had to go way down on my load because when I got to the very end of the motion, I was horrendously weak there.
At the back.
Yeah, very bad.
Yeah, the thing that most people are missing there is why, why if you're weak in the back, it's probably because you have quote unquote tight pecs.
Yeah.
Why are your pecs tight?
Oh yeah, weird, huh?
So right. So
Yeah.
what most people go, well, my pecs are tight, therefore you should stretch them. And the reality is, no, you shouldn't stretch them because your brain has decided to make them tight for a reason. Your brain is smarter than you are. Your brain's taking inventory. Hey, I'm tight because I'm trying to keep something stable. So the reality is to increase the mobility in at your pecs, you got to increase the stability at your shoulder joint. So oftentimes,
Son of a bitch.
Yeah.
oftentimes that's
So I don't get to do my flies anymore.
well, you can, but I would
Thank you.
suggest you pay more attention to trying to stabilize your scapula, right? Because my scapula is moving around. My body's got to tighten up all those muscles extra to try to support this massive amount of load that I'm trying to put through it.
The judging eyes you're giving me right now are killing me.
Yeah, I'm killing
He's
you.
just judging me so much with his eyes.
Yeah, man, I thought you were pretty
He's
cool
eye-upping
before
me
today.
down.
You
But
thought your pec deck was cool.
Yeah.
Nope.
no, listen, pec deck's great, but
He just took away my invitation to do his podcast.
sometimes the best exercise for chest is a great back exercise, well executed.
Yeah.
So your ability to stabilize your scapula back and down is going to be the number one limiting factor in your ability to contract your pecs. So if you have poor pecs, if you have poor upper pecs, it's always a weak scapula or a weak mid-trap, your weak ability to stabilize your scapula.
How much of your training, I guess, even when you were competing, is more just kind of structural maintenance versus like getting large or muscle building?
Unfortunately, not enough. I was so attached to the day. My definition in my brain was every single day is the Olympics. Every single day is the gold medal race, and I need to perform 100% every day. If you got in my way, I was going to squash you, and I was not a very nice person when I was training and competing. But it wasn't nearly enough. So, I thought, getting more body work, getting more therapy, getting more massage, getting more muscle activation stuff, that was going to be enough to create this resilience, and it wasn't. So, I wish 25% of my training, at least to begin every single workout, was focused around creating stability. And for everyone listening, this is what I would do. Like, if you're training either upper body or lower body, you got to create a stable pelvis, you got to create a stable scapula. Like, you have to. So, people go, why does my scapula matter? Well, every one of the muscles in your upper body originates in the scapula. Every one. So, like, if you're not stabilizing your scapula, you don't have great control and strength and able to get your scapula into that really retracted and depressed position, you can't build those muscles effectively. It's a literal impossibility, or at least you're not contracting them maximally. And when it comes to your lower body, you got to have a stable pelvis, man. Like, you can't fire a cannon from a canoe, right? You got to have a really stable base. And if both ends are moving, because we know if I'm training hamstrings or quads, my knee is moving, has to move. The other end has to be locked in stone, completely anchored. If it's not, you're not building your quads. So unless you have a really stable pelvis, and that includes pelvic floor, that includes glutes, that includes rectus femoris, rectus abdominis, all those things need to be very, very active and consciously and then eventually unconsciously controlled.
Yeah.
So without that, you don't build muscle, man.
What movements are you doing? Because I kind
Kegels.
of what I have. Yeah,
Yeah.
what I have. I just did a
That's why we're
Kegel.
That was so fast.
Everybody just did a Kegel.
Yeah. Check out my
No, so I mean,
Hopefully you're watching that.
Come on,
but
go ahead.
what kind of implements are you using for the
so sometimes
stabilizing that?
it's just as simple as going to where you're weak and spending time there.
Yeah.
So at the bottom of a squat, what does people do at the bottom of a squat? They bounce. They try to get out there as fast as possible because they're really weak there.
Yeah.
The load is very challenging there, and they just get out. So like go there.
Isometrics.
Sure.
Love
And as much as it's funny, like just getting the way you get a muscle strong and stable is by taking it to its weakest or to its shortened position and getting stronger there. And sometimes it's lengthened position and getting stronger there. So how do you get strong at something? Spend time there.
Yeah.
It's so simple, man. There's nothing complicated about exercise. We just complicate it because we're so focused on the external. Like, I'm going to do this exercise. It doesn't fucking matter what exercise you do. It matters the result you get. So I don't give you shit if you squat or if you do a sumo squat or if you just fucking stay there and find some stability and strength. I've started doing yoga. People go, man, you're trying to get more flexible. I'm like, yoga's not about flexibility. Yoga's about stability and calm mind, right? Like, so my pelvis is way more stable, way more quote-unquote flexible. My shoulders are way more stable. I feel so much better from just doing yoga a couple times a week because now I'm like, oh, I actually know how to move these muscles. I'm paying attention to the pelvic floor. I'm paying attention to breathing. All these things are massive, but and huge correlation outside of fitness.
Yeah.
How do you know when to take a very direct approach like that, just spending more time in that lengthened position, like the example that Andy used with the pec deck, like being very weak in that horizontally abducted position,
Sure.
And then you came back and said, well, the best exercise for that would be a back exercise. You have scapular stability issues. It wasn't just spend more time in that lengthened position. Like, is that in that example, is that still a viable thing, just to spend more time hanging out at the end of his range of motion?
Yes, theoretically, if the best way to understand tight muscles, man, is, as I briefly tried to say, is the reason something is tight or weak is because it's not stable. So we have to find the reason this is tight, and usually it's because of a weak antagonist. So I'm sure 90% of the listeners go, I have tight hamstrings. Why do you have tight hamstrings? Most people have tight hamstrings because they have weak hip flexors, particularly the quad muscles. So the quad muscles that cross the hip. So if you can strengthen that, all of a sudden my hamstrings work a lot better. My hamstrings are a lot more mobile. Is one solution better than the other? I honestly don't know. Nobody's ever tested. Maybe Andy can do this in his lab. But like, which is better? Do I want to, get stronger in that position where I'm weak by just getting strong in that position, or do I want the antagonist to get stronger, thereby allowing my brain to let this muscle relax? I don't know the answer. Anecdotally, I would say that strengthening the antagonist will give you a better result in improving mobility.
Yeah. So is this something where just a balanced training program, well designed, will handle a lot of these problems kind of automatically, so to speak?
Yeah. Just getting, like I said, just getting strong where you're weak, and maybe both, right? If I improved my mobility at, if Andy improved his mobility at his pecs, now he's got this greater range of motion, well, the first thing you should logically do is go there and start getting it stronger. Because if it's weak and you're just giving yourself this range, well, that could be
a problem
too.
Yeah. When you have years and years of this experience and you're kind of looking forward now, we have the Instagram account, the podcast. How are you transitioning this into kind of an education platform, and how are people able to implement this stuff into their own training?
So I've got a members site. My goal is to empower, now I've shifted my focus from 1 million to 10 million. I want to empower 10 million people with the skill set to take control of their body. That's really it. And so I'm not teaching you exercise. I'm teaching you principles. Yeah. I want to teach you really simple principles, which you guys see you can grasp on in a short period of time. So I've got a member site, MI40 Nation. So my business is MI40, which stands for Muscle Intelligence. Some people know it as Muscle Intelligence, others know it as MI40. Just trying to empower you with the thought process, man. I don't want to teach you like, hey, man, do a bench press because bench press worked for me. That's just stupid. Yeah. So that's my focus is. The more I can get this simplified for people, the more I can get it to more people. I love doing it. You guys can see my sincerity, the altruistic desire to actually help people. So I travel the world now doing seminars. I do a lot of camps at my gym. So I get 3-day training camps at my gym where you can come in. I coach them all now. There was times where I tried to bring other coaches, but I just love doing it, man. I love being able to connect with people. I feel like I can really change their life. So it's, on top of that, and this is the new evolution of my brand and my business is you realize you can give, let's say give 1,000 people the best program in the world, and 5% get a world-class result. I'm like, well, what's wrong with the 95%? You get 20% who get a good result, and you get 80% who get no results at all or very little results. You go, why is this? So there's a huge, as you guys know, psychological component. As we talked earlier in the podcast, is like you got to manage stress. You got to learn how to, manage this parasympathetic thing. All these things are huge. The gut, the inflammation, insulin sensitivity. So now, as of July 1st, coming up in July 1st, I'm changing my website, so it's almost like the operating system for muscle. It's like if you want to build any amount of muscle, I'm going to give you a module based around how to fix your limiting factor. We're going to try to figure out some type of algorithm so you can choose or you can decide, or at least we'll help you decide what your limiting factor is right now. So, is it parasympathetic? Is it your digestive tract? Is it, whatever, inflammation? Give you something to try to mitigate that, and then we'll give you, the X's and O's, the great programs for you to actually benefit from. Because, you guys know this, man. You give somebody the best program, and usually you're struggling to manage their psychology more than you're struggling to manage the program. So there's definitely an evolution there.
Nothing like battling someone sleeping 4 hours a night. Like, this program sucks.
Right.
You're like, dude, what is wrong with you?
Right.
Go to sleep.
I had 17 scoops of pre-workout today. Why can't I sleep?
So do you actually? That's a good point. I'm gonna guess here that you're pretty much against all sort of stimulants now, or mostly for training.
Man, I'm not against anything. If you like it, if you need it, if it makes you feel good, makes you happy, go do it. But I think psychological response is more important. So, if you like it, if you feel good, go do it. But now let's figure out, make sure we're putting our foot on the gas pedal. Yeah. Let's make sure we're using the brake. So I'm attached to what happens after the workout way more than I am to happens what pre-workout, and because that's like, replenishing your stores, man. Yeah. We got to turn down your nervous system. We've got to make sure we're mitigating cortisol. We make sure we're replenishing glycogen. So all these things are so important to making sure our body's prepared tomorrow to do it again. So that's where my attachment is what's happening, in those hours after workouts, what's happening in those hours before bed to prepare your body for sleep, to prepare your nervous system for sleep, make sure your body's ready for that. So I don't even attach, like pre-workout, I'm more about nootropic stuff, I'm more about focus stuff, non-stimulating things to help replenish your brain. Post-workout, it's like, okay, what are we doing, post-workout to make sure my body can be in this rested state, calm down, brain's calm down, nervous system's calm down, muscles are being replenished, and tomorrow I can crush it again. That's what everyone's missing, right? Everyone's so focused on gas pedal, nobody's focused on slowing down after the workout.
Nootropics have been something that have gotten much more popular over the last couple of years. Like, what do you like right now? Like, what are some things that you use that you think there's real research behind that are beneficial?
I'll give you my exact stack. I'm the world's biggest advocate of alpha GPC. If everyone I think it's amazing. I actually use 600 milligrams 3 times a day. So I actually started using it before bed. I'm doing a little experiment to see what it does with my growth hormone. So not a stimulating thing at all. It's more just supporting brain's choline, acetylcholine. So alpha GPC, huperzine in a cyclical fashion, which is a acetylcholine esterase inhibitor. So we're going to prevent the breakdown. I've actually just recently been doing like a 4-week dive into aniracetam and oxiracetam. So I was for the longest time against these racetams because I don't like effing with my brain, man. I'm like, no way, man. And then I actually heard someone who I really respect say he's been doing it every day for the last 15 years. And I was like, okay, let's
I think you're smart. I'll do that.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what it was. I was like, okay, well that tells me that it's worth it. I'm going to try it. And it's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. As far as keeping you calm, keeping your brain straight, calming down the underlying stress and anxiety, it's great, man. So aniracetam, not a high dose, 500 milligrams. So that's awesome. And I don't even know if that's so much of a pre-workout. That's like you do it at 6 in the morning and you're chilling for the whole day. I really like N-acetyltyrosine for driving dopamine. I like N-acetyl-carnitine. I've been doing some lion's mane, some 4-sigmatic lion's mane. Big fan of that stuff. That's pretty much it, man. Keep it really simple, right? Like I'm not trying to do all these different, I know there's companies out there who are putting 30 different products in there, and who the hell knows what that's doing to your brain chemistry. I'm just not about that stuff, man. Like, everything you do, there's usually something that happens on the back end. So it's always minimum effective dose. Like if I know something is working, do that. So the only thing you're trying to do pre-workout is you're trying to influence dopamine and acetylcholine. That's it. Like, how can I get my dopamine levels elevated? How can I get my acetylcholine levels elevated? So dopamine's going to give me a little more drive. Acetylcholine's going to give me a little more focus, greater ability to contract my muscles. So, dopamine, we're going to talk about L-Dopa. We're going to talk about tyrosine and acetyltyrosine. And then choline, we're talking about, GPC and huperzine. So, and Bacopa is a great product too. Bacopa Mineri is a great product, but a little more calming, but really great for focus and studying. If you guys are writing or anything like that, I love that stuff. But yeah, keeping it really simple, man. I think there's, everyone's jumping on the nootropic bus, and there's 300 things that you could make nootropics, and even just B vitamins, man. If you're not taking a methylated B vitamin, like that's huge. And I actually notice a difference. Like I'll intentionally cycle on things and cycle off. B vitamins, when you're off, you notice it. I notice a difference.
Yeah. Any other supplements that you like? Is that pretty much it? Or any that you hate? That you like? This suck.
The rest.
All of everything else. No.
Any company that I don't work with anymore. Boom. Here you go.
Smash. Well, man, I'll tell you what. I try to, like I said, I focus more on what's happening post-workout more than I do pre-workout. So I'll give everybody my post-workout cocktail, man. So I'm using taurine, theanine, magnesium, every workout. Dose range, I don't even want to give a dose, so let's stay away from that. So taurine, I would think everyone should be taking taurine after the workout and before bed. I think everybody can benefit from L-theanine, but it's not necessary. It's one of those things that it's a really great serotonin agonist, and I don't know that everyone needs it. Magnesium, I think everyone is underdosed in magnesium. So those 3 things post-workout, and then electrolytes. So if you're not replenishing electrolytes, your body can't perform. So that to me is massive. And then I'm attached to a lot of greens. I'm a big fan of taking some type of super greens product. That's it, man. Like I try to keep it so simple. Like I'm a natural. Like I'm kind of turning into a hippie, man. To be honest, as much as it sounds. But you eventually realize, like I've gone through my whole life doing all these mindless meathead things, and you realize, God, it's fucking dumb. Like all these synthetic shit I'm putting in my body. My body's. You can't live forever putting synthetic shit into your body. If you actually want to live a good, vigorous, rigorous life, you got to be healthy, man. So for me, it's just like food, the highest quality food. Obviously, fish oils and things like this as well are in there, probiotics. but really just eating around, focusing my nutrition mostly around food rather than supplements.
Yeah.
You mentioned some of the dieting stuff you're playing with right now. Some extreme keto. What are some of the things you've seen? What's that look like?
I'm just seeing how high can I push my fat?
Yeah.
And I'm not using exogenous ketones. I'm not even using ketone. Well, I use ketone meter, but how high can you push your fats without seeing a negative effect? So Andy and I were talking off halfway here about macros. How much do they matter? Do they matter? So I'm just playing with it, man.
Yeah.
I started a couple 100 grams of fat a day and push it up as high as I can until I start to get fat and see what my body can adapt to.
Yeah.
Where are you keeping your protein?
Again, experimenting with it. So I usually base it around training. So if yesterday I told you I did this 10-hour, 9-hour hike. So my protein's high today because I feel like my body's in a big hole right now. Whereas normally protein's relatively low, like 20, 25%.
Okay.
I don't know if that's relatively low for most people,
So
but someone who's an athlete.
You're like 200 grams ish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for me, being 265 pounds now, I'm a little under 200 grams. I'm usually about 150 to 180.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and dude, some days I'm at 60. To be honest, some days I'll have one meal of protein, but just manipulating, seeing what my body does, seeing what my body composition does, and the objective is always like, what's the smallest amount I can train and lose body fat? What's the most I can eat and lose body fat? And then playing with it, right? So
Awesome. One of the coolest things about this job is I get to sit down and talk to you and learn from one of the best.
Thanks, man.
And,
dude, I appreciate it.
It's dude, this is an honor. Anybody that's got the brains behind the body that you see on stage and knows way too much about this stuff is just a pleasure to talk to. So I appreciate it.
Andrew, I appreciate you, man.
Where can people find you?
mi40nation.com. Social is IFBB Ben Pack. Muscle Expert Podcast, man. I'm like you guys. I have this amazing opportunity to interview really awesome people, and that's cool, man. That's really it. I'm leveraging this platform. Like I don't claim to be special. I just claim to meet really cool people who make me smarter and share awesome information, man. We're all trying to do the same thing, right? Empowering people with this great skill set. And dude, I think everyone really deserves to know that they can build a great body. They can be confident. They can have a great life if you start taking ownership, like Andy mentioned. Dude, take absolute extreme ownership for anything. Giving Jocko Willink a shout out. If you can take extreme ownership for absolutely everything in your life, you'll change it, man. If you can't take ownership, you can't change it because you don't think you can, right? So giving people the realization that, hey, man, you can build an awesome body. You can build muscle. It's not your genetics. You just don't know the steps. If you want to build a world-class cake, go to a world-class baker and get a recipe. And you can do it, man. Yeah. You can do anything. So I'm trying to give the recipe to build your body, the blueprint for your body.
I love it.
Last name P-A-K.
P-A-K-U-L-S-K-I. That's why I abbreviated on social. It's just IFBB Ben Pack, P-A-K. And same thing on YouTube is if you go to Muscle Intelligence, you'll find that.
Awesome.
Cool.
Andy,
booyah.
where can people find you?
Oh, geez. Andy
In
Galpin.
the lab.
Yeah.
Find me in the lab.
AndyGalpin.com. You can check out the podcast, The Body of Knowledge, and Dr. Andy Galpin everywhere else.
I thought you were going with 50 Cent there. Andy, where can you find? You can find me in the club.
You can find me in bed at 8:15. Sometimes 8:20.
Exactly.
Doug.
You can find me everything Barbell Shrugged, of course, and then also Instagram, Douglas E. Larson.
Yeah. Get to barbellshrugged.com. All kinds of articles from Movement RX, Dr. Teresa and I, and Anders Varner on all the socials. Get into iTunes, YouTube, subscribe, give us a comment. If not, he's going to come squat with you one day, and you're going to be in a lot of pain. So leave a nice comment. We'll see you guys next week.
Can we get a group hug?
Oh,
yeah.
huge hug.
Yeah.
We'll even on-film hug.
All
damn.
right.
Nice.
Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the show. If you like the show, which I know you did, please go share it on Facebook, Instagram, or whatever social media channel you happen to be loving at the moment. Pinterest, Twitter, Tumblr. Share it on Tumblr.
Next on Barbell Shrugged, hanging out with Kenny Santucci from Solace, New York, talking culture and creating kick-ass gyms.